Alright. Hope you like this, Milo. Keep up the good work. Now, as I was saying, I will never pander to SJWs.
Calling people daddy is gross. Stop kink-shaming me. Kink-shaming is my kink.
Hey everyone, Irishman Rants here. Let's talk about Lacey Green for the 900th time on this channel. Despite getting some scientific facts wrong over the weekend, or so my notifications tell me, this week seems to be very productive for her. Just an hour ago, she released the second part of her study on the more than two genders theory, or the genders as a social construct theory. She's also going to be interviewed by Dave Rubin, which I think deserves a good hearty sneer. But most importantly, she's finally starting the first of many debates she promised over many political and, sexual issues. She's deciding to have a debate on sex and gender with 3 different people. The first person is ContraPoints, who is a non-binary YouTube activist who, from what I hear, is Jesus in the flesh. The second person is Blair White, who is a trans woman with some pretty conservative views, and is best known for saying such things as all transgenderism is gender dysphoria, as well as criticizing Riley Dennis and Milo Stewart as trans trenders, though she has since apologized for that as of recently. So it seems that she's making progress. The third person is Meghan Murphy, a radical feminist who hates everything having to do with the penis, to the point where she doesn't recognize trans women as women, and only refers to them as men, because she feels that all men are evil and that men are trying to get into femininity or the woman culture by becoming trans women. She also is very much against the term TERF and thinking that it's a term used as a slur. No, honey. Meghan Murphy, you are a radical feminist who is exclusive of trans people, of trans women, trans men, whatever. So you are a trans, exclusionary, radical feminist. Hey, well, if you take the first letter of each of these 4 words, it spells TERF. So, you're a TERF. Social justice warrior is more of an insult because while somebody could be campaigning for social justice, warrior is a very subjective term, usually attributed to how fierce their activism is. So it's more of an insult. Social justice warrior is an insult that doesn't have any meaning. A trans exclusionary radical feminist does have meaning because that's exactly what you are. You are a trans exclusionary radical feminist. So how is it an insult to call you exactly what you are? But I actually don't know that much about Meghan Murphy. From what I've seen, she's actually a very well-off woman. She is the founder of a website called Feminist Current that has been quite popular among radical feminists. I would say that she's a very respectable and mature woman, so I think before the debate she'll be very respectful of everyone. You fucking bitch. So 3 days ago, when getting into a little bit of a Twitter scuffle with ContraPoints, Meghan Murphy acted like a total asshat. When ContraPoints said that she wouldn't give Meghan Murphy a platform if she were in Lacey's position, but also said that it's Lacey's decision whether or not to allow her on, which I respect. Meghan Murphy said that she likewise doesn't support her positions, but would also give her a platform. And somehow this devolved into her saying stuff like "as a male" or calling her a dude constantly. It was at this point that I realized that Meghan Murphy is pretty much irredeemable in my eyes, going just so over the rails and being so disrespectful to someone that she's going to be debating in a couple days. If you're going to have a civilized debate, I think the best thing to do is to be civilized before the debate. This isn't WWE. You're not supposed to start this sort of hype machine trying to hype up this big debate. You're not a fucking wrestler, Meghan Murphy. And even if you were, I'm pretty sure ContraPoints would kick your ass, seeing as how she's Jesus in the flesh. But around this time, Shoe on Head,
fuck this gay earth,
decided to bring up an old article from 2012 that Meghan Murphy wrote about BDSM and kinks. And it was possibly one of the most idiotic things I'll ever read on this channel. It has so much wrong in it that you would think it was her kink to be just so fucking wrong about everything that's in this fucking world. Now, I realize that since it's an article from 2012, it's not really a current event, but honestly, it's just so dumb and so interesting. I just wanted to go back in time and look at this. I'm gonna take you back to the past to read the hottest takes that suck ass. It's Not About You, Beyond Kink Shaming, written by Meghan Murphy exactly 5 years and 1 day ago. Happy anniversary? Let's just start by saying this. I really don't care about kink or about kinky people. It just doesn't interest me. I don't give a shit about your leather fetish, really. But because I recently dared to suggest that RCMP Officer Jim Brown's sadomasochistic behavior just might, be related to the fact that we live in a pornified world that sexualizes violence against women and male domination. Oh boy. A pornified world. God, what is it with these people and trying to come up with new terms? By the way, make sure to share the hashtag #TotalNyberg out there. It was decided by the internet, and the internet never lies, folks. Or maybe they're not lying, it's just their opinion, and you can't just say that they're lying, and it's actually just their opinion. That I hated kinky sex/kinky people. That I simply don't know enough about BDSM to be qualified to judge images that are very clearly fetishizing male domination. Well, I would think that you would like that, because you seem to want to dominate males and or avoid them at all costs. And that I think all people who are into BDSM are terrible, terrible people. Basically, the response I got was exactly the same response I get every time I critique porn and prostitution, and in fact, was the exact same response I got from the burlesque community when I dared to suggest that burlesque wasn't feminist. I mean, I guess you could say that in some cases maybe burlesque was a bit sexist, with the whole corsets and whatnot. But some people just like to dress up in burlesque because, it makes them feel good, or they want to take it back with a new meaning. So, it's kind of like Slave Leia, how it's supposed to degrade her, but instead she looks badass when she's choking her slaver. What was that response? But I like it. It's my choice. It makes me feel good. You can't tell me what to do. Me, me, me. Well, hey, here's a wild idea. Maybe it isn't all about you. Maybe the things that turn you on, make you feel hot, and give you orgasms aren't just about your personal, private, individual life. Except that they are, because they're doing it in the privacy of their own home. I mean, public sex would probably count as maybe a fetish that's making people uncomfortable, but how is it affecting other people? Maybe the things you do are shaped by outside forces like patriarchy. Good night. I have to read the rest, don't I? Maybe your actions have a larger impact. Maybe you didn't spend your formative years deep asleep in a magical fairy cave only to awake from your slumber to suddenly and mysteriously have fantasies about hog-tying and raping women. But hey, I get it. Oh, the condescending levels are just too damn high. I will admit that I'm not really into rape fantasies at all. My kink is that I can only have sex if I'm listening to Minecraft song parodies.
Mining! I'm swinging my pickaxe to left to right mining. I usually get more diamonds, but it's alright.
But does that mean I'm a bad person? Does that mean I'm affecting people who aren't actually part of it? You know what this is? This is the equivalent of that meme where it shows two people about to have sex and they both consent, and it shows the Virgin Mary saying, "I do not consent," and going, "Did you forget someone?" Basically, you forgot to give some space for Jesus in between your pants. Except I'm pretty sure that she thinks all religions except Islam are bad. But let's continue. But hey, I get it. Oh, now she's just talking to you like, hey, I get you. People are defensive about their personal lives and private interests. That's the first thing in this whole, article. that you've said right. People are defensive about their personal lives and private interests because sometimes they really like something. They really like anime, and so when you attack it, some people will either shrug it off or be furious about it, particularly when those interests are very much attached to their identities. And I can understand that as well. There are some people who almost live and breathe their kinks. If your entire conception of yourself is based on being a part of the BDSM community, and you think that BDSM is just about the awesomest pastime ever, then it might be hard to hear a critique. Yeah, and I think those people might be a bit deep into it if they're just shaping their entire lives around BDSM. I mean, I haven't seen the movie Secretary yet, but I heard it's kind of like that, maybe. From what I heard, 50 Shades of Grey is exactly like that. It might be hard to digest the fact that just because you really, really like something doesn't mean that it is or should be free from deconstruction or critique.
You can't really love something unless you're willing to mock it for all it's worth. Just look at your children.
I bet Nash would love this person, since he's the person who's trying to push this whole "your entertainment does not need defending" agenda. Which, I mean, I don't disagree with that necessarily, but does that mean that all defense of a person's preferred entertainment, it doesn't need defending? You know, if somebody says some negative things about a movie I like, then I'll give my point of view of why I actually really like that movie. I'm not going to attack them, but I am going to defend, a film I really like. Does that mean I'm a bad person? No, not at all. Except in Meghan Murphy's eyes, and maybe Nash's. By the way, invite me on Radio Dead Air. I like makeup. I wear it almost every day. I think eyeliner is the best. My name is Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Way. I really like being able to cover up my zits and under eye circles. Does that make makeup an inherently good thing? Does it mean that makeup is feminist and progressive because I am feminist progressive? No, because there's a thing called fucking individuality, you daft loon. Does it mean that the only possible reason I could enjoy wearing makeup is because I like it, point blank? Yeah. If you like makeup, then you like makeup. I mean, maybe there's some other reason? No, of course not. I wear makeup because I grew up in a culture that scrutinizes women's looks and values their appearances. Yep, that's the reason. And that must mean that all women who wear makeup only wear it because of their patriarchal society. You're a genius. You get an A-. I live in a consumer culture that invents flaws and insecurities in order to be able to sell us things that will fix our flaws. Again, I'm not denying that there is a bias towards different types of beauty, but that doesn't automatically mean that everyone buys makeup just because of people telling them that they look fat or ugly or whatnot. Sometimes people just wear makeup because they want to look pretty, not because they need to feel pretty, just because they want to wear makeup. Sometimes it's just fun for them. Why are you being the fun police right now? Can't you just realize that some people do things for fun and not because of societal dogma or whatnot? I don't know if even that's the right term, but it makes more sense of whatever shit you're saying. So makeup isn't really the best. There are many aspects of the beauty industry that can and should be critiqued. Again, a decent statement. But does that make me a terrible person because I wear makeup? No. Hey, you're actually defending some of your personal interests. So at least you're somewhat consistent. Does it mean I'm not a real feminist because I wear makeup? Of course not. But it also doesn't mean it's perfectly fine and awesome and that I shouldn't explore or acknowledge the fact that I wear makeup because I was taught and bought into the idea that in one way or another I was going to be judged based on my appearance, and that I've been convinced and have convinced myself that I needed to wear makeup in order to avoid looking ugly and sick. You seem like a very sad person who had a really tough childhood, so I at least have some sympathy for you. Who knows, maybe you had a really bad male experience and this is why you have this vehement dislike of my gender. Or my sex, I should say. Oops. But you have to realize that no one is going to have the same ideas as you. People do it for fun. Apparently you do it because you have really, really low self-esteem. But some people have very high self-esteem, and just want to put on makeup because they want to, enjoy putting on makeup because it makes them feel good. Maybe they can acknowledge that there are some problems in the makeup industry or some problems with society's views on beauty and body type acceptance, but some people just want to do it because it feels good, and what's so wrong about that? Not everyone is conformed to like makeup because of the patriarchy. That would be a dystopia, and we don't live in a dystopia. You should really read Feminist Current sometime, Cody. It's a real humdinger, You're gonna get a laugh. It's a real hoot. I'm not perfect. No one is. But you, Meghan Murphy, are especially not perfect. But every time someone criticizes the beauty industry, do I get all offended and up in arms and pretend like I'm being personally attacked? No, because criticizing oppressive practices in an oppressive culture is not the same thing as saying that I, as an individual, am a terrible person. Yeah, sure. And back to kink. Alright, so let's finally get off of this high horse about makeup, oh, I like makeup, but I have to acknowledge that makeup is the devil. Anyway, I don't give a shit if you have kinky sex, so stop tweeting at me about it. Oh god, this person's sex repulsed, aren't they? I really don't give a fuck. Second, I don't think that all people who engage in BDSM are necessarily terrible, evil people. Third, just because you are a feminist and because you consider yourself to be a progressive guy doesn't make everything you do a feminist or progressive practice. Yeah, because I would say that if we're going to want equality between the sexes, which is what feminism is supposed to be about, we shouldn't be turning away males and trans women, like Meghan Murphy is doing. Now, for the purposes of clarification, which I stated that, with regard to the discovery photos of Corporal Jim Brown engaging in sadomasochism, we're only permitted to say he should have kept it hidden from public view, because to say anything else defies the modern ethos post-sexual revolution that says, sex is always good, erections are always good. If it turns you on, so be it. It isn't because I agree with the idea that erections are always right. Boners are in charge, you guys. This is going in a direction I'm really not gonna like. That male desire should decide what, how, and with whom sex happens or is, or that only PIV equals sex. As this blogger decided I did because it was convenient for the purposes of their argument. Staying after my quote, for Murphy, for the purposes of this article, it's the erection that dictates sex. Again, this is something feminists have been fighting for a long time, trying to erase the idea that PIV sex is the only sex that counts. And I would say that erections don't dictate sex, Sometimes you're gonna get an erection and then your girl doesn't want to. That's called consent, kiddos. Or sometimes when a woman has a bit of an aroused feeling, then and a man doesn't, then there's nothing you can do about it, because men have been getting away with too much lately. It's very obvious, both within my original post and based on all of my previous... Do I really have to read this phrase? Both within my original post and based on all of my previous erection-related writing, that I'm critical of the idea that male desire rules all. And I would be critical of that because, male desire doesn't rule all. That I am critical of heteronormativity, of compulsory sexuality, and of the idea that PIV is the only way to have sex. In fact, I make exactly the opposite argument, often. But if you can't come up with a quality argument, the best thing to do is just invent one, yeah? I kind of see where this is coming from. But with contexts, basically because I point out that we live in a culture that sexualizes violence against women, and that it wasn't the best thing ever, that an RCMP officer who was involved in the Picton investigation was also into dominating women and eroticizing violence in his private life. I got a whole bunch of comments and tweets from people explaining to me that either their female partner enjoys being submissive, that they themselves like being tied up, spanked, and beaten, that BDSM is consensual, that fantasy and reality are completely separate, blah, blah, blah. You can't just blah, blah, blah that. Those are all valid arguments. BDSM often is consensual. Fantasy and reality are completely separate. These are valid criticisms of your work. People trying to say that you had a problem with him having this sort of BDSM in his private life while investigating. I don't even know what this is about, honestly, so maybe there's some more context to this. Honestly, I don't know if we're in a culture that sexualizes violence. If anything, I would say we're kind of against that, because that's wrong. I mean, I guess with 50 Shades of Grey having just been a thing around the time that this article was released, maybe we were starting to go down that route, but at the same time, we're not really sexualizing violence. We're more a sex-repressed society, if we're being honest. Allow me to reiterate, I don't care. And it's in all caps, so you should definitely know that she doesn't care. Just like I don't care what specific kinds of porn you are into, just like I don't care how much super awesome, empowering fun stripping on stage for annoyances for you. Why you have to put it like that? That's pretty sex negative. You liking something doesn't make it innately good. That's true. I like the movie The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D, but I can kind of know that that movie isn't really good. There is no protective bubble around things we think are fun. I think watching The Real Housewives of Vancouver is fun. Does that make it good? Hell fucking no. But I suppose it's about time it came out about that secret shame.
I'll go eat some flowers.
My secret shame. Whether or not an individual enjoys being beaten up does not negate the possibility that eroticizing male dominance is tied to the fact that we live in a male-dominated culture. Whether or not an individual consented to being dominated doesn't alter the context of patriarchy. Just because a person is not an evil piece of shit or a murderer in their day-to-day lives does not mean that their fantasies are not fantasies that were shaped by sexism and a porny culture that objectifies women and thinks that rape scenes should be masturbatory tools. And I will strike down on thee with vengeance and furious anger. And you shall know my name is Anthony Fantano when I lay my 7 out of 10 upon thee. I'm fine. Let's continue. I think that speaks for itself. What I wrote about was an RCMP officer who played a role in the Picton investigation. So Brown was looking into the disappearance and statistic murder of dozens of women. He also happens to be turned on by dominating women and playing out sadistic fantasies in his private life. This sounds suspiciously like a Paul Verhoeven movie. Honestly, I kind of want this movie now. Make it Paul Verhoeven and James Spader. I know he already did Secretary, but he's perfect for this. Does that necessarily make him a murderer? No. Who was even asking that question? He's not even a murderer. Because to be a murderer, you have to murder people. I didn't know if you knew this. Is it worth exploring the fact that a man in a position of power who was a part of a force that made it pretty clear that they didn't give two shits about the women who were going missing from the DTES until they were forced to pay attention, and that he liked to play out misogynist, violent fantasies in his private time? I mean, like, if it's consensual, if it has misogynistic language that no one other than the two parties involved will hear. If a tree falls in the woods and it says that there's only two genders, is it transphobic? Yes. Is it worth exploring the idea that violence against women is consistently eroticized in pornography, as well as in mainstream media, and that it is bad for women? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you didn't care about this. I don't think that eroticized porn is really mainstream media. That's why we call it the deep web. Some people might take it to a big extreme and think that that's all they want to do with women, or that's what all women are like, and will base their entire worldview of women on pornography. But that's a vocal minority that's been pushed a lot. So I don't think that it's necessarily bad for women. For some people who might criticize porn, it could be bad for women, but it's not automatically bad for women. But you say yes instead. Oh boy. Does it mean that everyone who likes kinky sex is a bad person? No. Though you kind of just implied that. This isn't about you and you alone. Save room for Jesus. BDSM is hot to some people because these power rules exist in real life. You didn't invent power rules, and you didn't invent your sexuality out of thin air. Jesus, I'm seeing where the turfiness comes in. It exists as it does because of the world we live in one way or another. Everything is because of society. This is starting to sound like rape culture. We understand sex as we do because of the world we live in and the culture that surrounds us. Panic claims that most of the men who hit a woman consensually would never do it outside a sexual context. The taboo nature would be lost otherwise. Just as rape is not about sex, neither is domestic violence. So what? So you hit a woman in the bedroom and not outside of a sexual context. Somehow that's supposed to convince me that BDSM isn't a turn-on for some people because of a context of inequity and the unequal power rules that already exist between men and women? Look, I understand it's not your thing, so just fuck off already, alright? At this point, yeah, you can critique it all you want, but you're just really getting into morality stuff. And if it's not within your morals, then it's not supposed to be the world revolving around you, alright? That's what we're getting at. You think that the world revolves around you, that what you say is fact, when it's not. Just because you don't like it that a woman gets hit in a sexual context, in the privacy of her own home, with her own husband, doesn't mean that you have to object in saying, but that's because of the oppression of females in Western society.
Western society's fault. It's all the Western society's fault.
The woman who gets off on being hit by a man in bed isn't getting off on that because male power and dominance is eroticized by our culture. I thought you said that male dominance, like dominating over males, was because of culture or whatnot. Is that supposed to convince me that when a man hits you within a sexual context that has nothing to do with misogyny? Oh, sorry, that has nothing to do misogyny. A+. She consented to it. Is this some sort of internalized misogyny? Like, does she hate herself and other women, and so she wants to be slapped? Or is it just because the pain feels good to her? Does she just get off on the fact that she likes to be slapped? Who are you to judge? Apparently your fetish is denying trans women the right to be woman. I don't think that woman who is turned on is bad. You just fucking did. In fact, I think it's totally understandable that this is the kind of thing people might think is hot in the sexual context. And end of conversation? Yes. No. Fuck you. While you understand the concept that rape is about power, not sex, it actually isn't completely true. Power turns some people on, in the sex way. Rape is played out in porn all the time. People are into rape fantasies, like in the bedroom. Rape is very much tied up in our conception of sex. Again, that doesn't mean that a person who plays out rape fantasies in the bedroom is necessarily going to go out and rape a woman in real life, but because we live in a rape culture, rape is tied to our understanding of sex and sexuality. That's a very dark notion, and that is shitty. In fact, it's more than shitty. It actually impacts the real lives of real women. It certainly isn't an untouchable subject just because your sex life is dependent on those fantasies. No, I'm done. I'm fucking done. I got like 8 minutes left on this camera. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. She's basically saying that because you play out a rape fantasy in your bedroom, in the privacy of your own bedroom or dungeon or kitchen or whatever, that it's impacting rape victims. Is this rape culture appropriation or something? I don't even know. I don't even want to get up off the floor because I don't want to... I just want to sink into the ground because I don't want to be on the same planet as Meghan Murphy. I'm going to read one more paragraph because I'm running out of time, and then I'm just done with this because this is just completely idiotic. This is one of the dumbest takes I've ever read because it's basically saying that because of what you do in the privacy of your own room, the only reason that you like it is not because of personal preference or pleasure or fun. No, it's because of the patriarchy and how society eroticizes these sort of things. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on BDSM. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on BDSM. I'm not, nor do I desire to be. Well, I can definitely fucking tell that from this story. Your personal, individual experiences with BDSM are of little interest to me. It kind of seems like they are. That said, the phenomenon of sexualizing male violence against women and male dominance is of interest to me. And it is that, and only that, which I was addressing in my previous post. The reason why I would address that particular aspect of BDSM and do not care to address any other aspects of kink BDSM at this moment is because eroticizing violence against women and male dominance is a big part of our culture and is actually dangerous for a real woman in real life. What happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom. If there's an individual that decides to be fucked up and rape someone out there because of their erotic fantasies, then that individual is at fault. It's not because of some cultural, thing or whatnot. Just because someone has a rape fantasy doesn't mean that it will start rapes just in general. A rape fantasy in the bedroom between two consenting adults that doesn't lead to any rapes outside of that is fine. It's a bit weird, but it's fine. Men are a dominant group and women are a subordinate group. That's pretty misogynistic of you to say. Why can't we all just be equal? Why do you have to imagine us in this dystopia where men are the dominant people in society? I mean, maybe if it was, 1969 or something like that, I would agree. But it's 2017, or in this case 2012. I think that men and women are equal at this point. Women are subjected to violence at the hands of men on a daily basis. The missing and murdered women were killed by men. That's why the sexualization of inequity matters, and that's why images of an RCMP officer posing sadistic scenes with submissive women matters. What? Okay, so because the murderers were men, that means that it's the society's fault. It's not because of how fucked up in the head they are. It's because of what influenced them. Where have I heard that before?
But we have 40 years of research to tell us that violent media is bad for our children. According to the most comprehensive statistical analysis yet conducted, violent video games increase aggressive behavior as much as lead exposure decreases children's IQ scores.
Thank you, Slaver Hillary. It goes into something about the corporal having his sadomasochism compared to homophobia, which I don't necessarily agree with. It ends with this sentence, though. This isn't about you. This is not the time to defend your kinks. Get some perspective. I mean, they can defend their kinks all they want, since you're basically attacking them and saying that the only reason they have their kinks is because of Western society. I think this pretty much speaks for itself. Lacey, you have the freedom to have her on. I think it'll be very interesting. I think it'll be even more interesting to see Contra and Blair basically knock her out of the water for being a complete tool and a complete bigot. And with the tragic early passing of Nelson Ellis this week, I just want to say that I really hope Lafayette cooks up a nice juicy AIDS burger for Meghan Murphy. The hardest part is only picking 5. Catch you next time.